And welcome back to some sort of the Clear Jets podcast for us, Ben Blessington and Michael Nania. Michael, is it ever boring around these parts? Do we ever just have a regular week with just a regular podcast previewing a game? Obviously, some huge news that just dropped. The Jets released Will Parks. Michael, your initial reaction?
Yeah, never a normal week in the world of New York Jets football. You're going for a playoff chase, and out of nowhere, you hear that, one of your best special teamers, a big, beloved personality on social media, Will Parks getting released. Never a boring day in the world of New York Jets football.
All right, the bit's over. Let's talk about it. Zach Wilson?
Yeah.
Starting Sunday.
Oh, really? That's news to me. I thought Will Parks was the big news.
Okay, we can drop it. Let's just get to it. Let's just hop right into it.
All right.
I'm glad. I will say I'm glad we were late on this pod. I'm a senior in college, wrapping up finals. I had a paper due on Thursday night, and I was like, okay, can we just do it Friday? And then I was like, oh well, I felt bad about it because we had the fan, we got this momentum going. And then I woke up Friday and I just saw a text from Michael that just said "what" in all caps, and then I saw the news. Mike White not cleared. Zach Wilson started. And I was like, all right, well, good thing we waited.
When you saw that, what did you think it was?
Probably something about the uniforms, honestly. But once I saw it, I was like, all right, well, glad we waited because it's a completely different matchup now. Glad we didn't waste 2 hours previewing a game with Mike White because with Zach Wilson under center, it looks a lot different. So, Michael, let's go back. Yeah, when you first saw the news, how did you take it? I don't think you posted anything on Twitter. People want to know what Michael Nania is feeling. I think they already know, but let's just hear it.
Yeah, I'll be completely honest with you. I felt probably more distraught from this news than any of their losses this year. I'm being completely honest. That was my initial reaction, but I've processed it a little bit. Yeah, I'm being completely honest.
Come on, that's lame. You felt worse about this? Wait, go back. Right, you felt worse about this?
More so just because I feel like I've taken the losses well this year. I haven't, I even have some of my reactions recorded. I have not been flipping out after losses this year. I've been taking it professionally.
Are you fucking serious? You want me to pull up the receipts? Some of the texts I've gotten from you in game and post game this season, in wins too.
So earlier in games. By the end of the game, I kind of cooled down. By the end of the game, take it well. I don't know. I definitely was frustrated, but I'm gonna be optimistic here. I'm gonna hope for the best. I'm gonna root for Zach, and we're gonna go make the playoffs here. But definitely was frustrating to hear the news at first.
Yeah, it is a little curious. Mike White cleared to go back into the game. I would imagine the in-game X-rays didn't show a broken rib, and then either he went out there and made it worse, or the more extensive X-rays were able to show like the smaller fractures. It kind of sounds like he has a bunch of little mini fractures in the same area, and they're worried about if he gets hit, it'll break. It could puncture something internally or put him out for even longer. So it does sound like it's the right move to sit him. But now it leaves the Jets in the precarious situation of having their season and their playoff hopes rest on the shoulders of Zach Wilson, benched a month ago, hit the reset button for a few weeks. Now he's back. Do we think he can even get close to fixing some of his issues in this short time off? What are you expecting?
Yeah, I'm skeptical to be completely honest, because like you just said, it's only been 3 weeks here that he's been off. Is that enough time to fix your throwing mechanics, to get your head cleared, especially because this is not a easy situation you're walking back into here. This is as high pressure as it can get. You get benched, and Mike White comes in, and granted the team only went 1-2, but he's playing really well, and the whole team got behind him, the fan base got behind him, and now you come in here with the playoff hopes resting on your shoulders at home in front of a crowd that is not going to be patient. Let's be honest, he's going to hear it. If they go 3-0 on the first drive, I think MetLife Stadium is going to let him hear that. So
I'll keep the boost to myself, at least.
I definitely, I know you will, but a lot of fans there, I'm sure won't.
Yeah.
So it's a high pressure situation, and that's kind of what he struggled with the most. Who has he played his worst football against? It's the Patriots. Those rivalry games. The Patriots game at home this year, like that big Jets game. This is the biggest Jets game.
The Bills game was a big moment. He played well.
And then the Bills game, but I guess what I'd say is different about that is that the expectations were lower for that game, because they were big underdogs. They just lost to the Patriots. Like, everyone was down on them at that point. Or although I guess maybe that is similar to now, where no one's expecting anything. Everyone's kind of down on him. And so maybe he will rise up in this game like he did in that Bills game. So I have my doubts because I don't know if 3 weeks is enough to fix some of the things that he's been struggling with. I feel like it might take a whole offseason to, really hone in on those mechanics, figure out what's wrong, and take months hammering that down. And then mentally just kind of get the head cleared and really just reset going into a season. So I am skeptical, but at the same time, he's had moments this year. The Pittsburgh comeback was great. I think the Dolphins game was an underrated, very sharp performance. So it's not like he's never done anything this year. So, and they have won games with him. So they can win with him and they can make the playoffs, and he is capable of turning it around. But with all that being said, does he have the Jets' chances of winning this game, making the playoffs, gone down with him versus Mike White? I think they have, but that's also not to say that it's impossible for them to win this game or make the playoffs with him.
We're obviously going to spend a lot of time talking about Zach, and so we'll circle back to him. You mentioned playoffs. Let's break down some scenarios. And I know last time we did this, it was a little convoluted to go through all these different scenarios and break it down. Let's do a little brief breakdown of the picture. You've done all the legwork on this, Michael, breaking down all the probabilities. Let's do that, and then I have a simpler way of breaking it down, but we'll start with this. So, Michael, what do the Jets need to do? Or what's the best case scenario for them this weekend, and what do they need to do to make the playoffs?
Well, I think if you're looking at the big picture here over the last 4 weeks, I think the bottom line is that you have to get ahead of 2 out of the 3 teams you're competing against: Miami, the Chargers, and the Patriots. And, there are other miracle scenarios with the Ravens and Bengals maybe collapsing. You get ahead of one of them, but that's probably not happening. So realistically, you got to get ahead of 2 out of those 3 teams. And for that to happen, Patriots, we know you have to get ahead of them outright. That's obvious because the Pats have the head-to-head tiebreaker. Dolphins is most likely going to come down to that last game because unless the Jets can I guess we're getting to the complicated details here, but most likely that comes down to the last game unless the Jets really collapse over the next few weeks here. And then
the best way to look at that Dolphins game is if the Dolphins lose this Sunday against the Bills, and this would apply the next. I know they play the Packers the week after that and whatnot. But let's just say they lose to the Bills. That game's in Buffalo, right? Yeah, it's in Buffalo. So you're hoping that's a loss. If that's a loss, I think the Jets should. It comes down to the Jags game, honestly, but should at least have the win in Week 18. Because if they go, if they go 4-0, they'll make the playoffs. If they go 3-1, but that loss is either to Detroit this Sunday or Seattle a few weeks from now, they would still get in as long as the Dolphins lose this Sunday. Because if they're a game behind the Dolphins and they beat them Week 18, they'll match them and they have the tiebreaker. So that's why this Lions game with Zach is a little scary. But the Lions and Seahawks games, they're not expendable. But if they lose one, it's not the end of the world. It's really the Jags and the Dolphins games that are the most important. And then taking one of those NFC games.
Right, yeah. I think that's a good way to put it because, obviously you want to have both of those games in a best case scenario, but if you're going to lose one game, you definitely want it to be one of those 2 games in the NFC because the tiebreakers are just going to be so important here with the Chargers potentially looming as a tiebreaker team. It's going to be very important to have those AFC wins. And then obviously the Dolphins speaks for itself because if you lose that game, you're not passing the Dolphins and you have to get ahead of both the Patriots and the Chargers somehow. So beating the Dolphins puts you ahead of one team right there. Most likely, unless the Jets, again, collapse here the next 3 weeks, probably won't matter anyway then at that point. So that game right there determines one team, and then you just got to find a way to get ahead of the Pats and the Chargers. And then in the case of the Chargers, that conference record is what matters. So basically, if the Jets lose one fewer conference game than the Chargers over the next 4 games, they will win the tiebreaker. Because if they tie in conference record, then it goes down to common games, which the Jets would win in that scenario. So That's the goal. Lose one fewer conference game than the Chargers. That's why the conference games matters more. If you're going to lose to the Lions or the Seahawks.
And I will say, I know the Bengals have looked very good as of late, but they have a really tough schedule down the stretch here. They got the Buccaneers this weekend, who I know have not been great, and they probably should win that game, but they're on the road, and the Bucs are, in the mix of things to win the NFC South, fighting for playoffs. It's Tom Brady. You never know. Then they got the Patriots in Gillette, the Bills, and the Ravens. So if the Bengals go 1-3, the Jets should make it as well. So not that is.
Well, I mean, if they go 1-3, the Jets would have to go 4-0 to pass them because the Bengals have the head-to-head.
Can they go 3-1? If they go 3-1,
no,
you're the
Jets went 3-1. They would, because the Bengals are 9-4 right now. So
yeah. I see what you're saying. So wait,
the Jets went 4-0. Yeah, if they tie with the Bengals, the Bengals get the tiebreaker.
Right. I see what you're saying. Okay, so if that happens, the Jets would have to run the table. Regardless of the Jets want to run the table, they should be in. Here's the simple way of breaking it down. I thought this would be easy. Let's build the perfect parlay for the Jets weekend. Right? Let's pick all the games this weekend who we want to win, and not just the playoff scenarios. We have a few other ones in here, and we're going to build it right here. I'll put a little $5 on it. See how it's going. But really, the big game is the Dolphins and the Bills. All right, let's start. Obviously, you want the Jets to win. All right, we'll put that in. They are still the favorite. Yeah, they're still the favorite on DraftKings. All right, here we go. The Bills. You want the Bills to beat the Dolphins. So Jets, Bills, Ravens, Browns. Browns. You want the Browns to beat the Ravens. Maybe with Lamar Jackson's injury, the Ravens could drop a few games and make it interesting. What are some of the other ones? You said you want the Chiefs to beat the Texans because we want the. Yeah. I mean, that should definitely happen, but you want the Bills to not have the number 1 seed clinched when they play New England Week 18.
Right. Yeah. So I'd root for the Chiefs these next few weeks because Buffalo plays New England in that last game. We don't want the Bills to have the 1 seed clinched by then and potentially rest their starters against the Patriots. So I would add the Chiefs over the next few weeks.
All right, Raiders over Patriots. Josh McDaniels playing his mentor in Las Vegas. I think the Raiders are the favorites, so hopefully that would be a big one if the Raiders can really help the Jets out there. Titans Chargers. This is probably the best chance the Chargers have of losing unless they fumble one to the Rams or something like that. But obviously Titans over Chargers, Bucks over Bengals. We already talked about that one. I'll say Packers over Rams, and here's why. The Packers, if they beat the Rams and the Jets beat the Lions, they're in prime position to make the playoffs, and they play the Dolphins the next week. So maybe they can help the Jets out by beating the Dolphins. They'll be on the road, but it'll be Rodgers, December, playoffs on the line. You never know. And it's Matt LaFleur versus Mike McDaniel, similar system. So, but if the Packers lose, you're probably seeing Jordan Love. Packers will be out of it. Different set of circumstances, and I don't trust the Packers to win that game. So I'll say Packers beating the Rams. We'll throw that one in there. That's the Monday night game.
That's a good one because I know Aaron Rodgers said I think he wants to play till they're mathematically out. I don't know if they would be technically after they lose if they lose this week, but for all intents and purposes, they would be out. So that is a good savvy pick to put in there because just looking ahead, hopefully Rodgers can play against the Dolphins on Christmas.
All right, that's 8 picks. And Jets over Lions, Bills over Dolphins, Browns over Ravens, Chiefs over Texans, Raiders over Patriots, Titans over Chargers, Bucks over Bengals, and Packers over Rams. That's almost a plus 7,000.
Totally not complicated at all.
Totally not complicated at all. That was way easier than
only half the league. That's it.
If you put $5 on that, you'd win $350. So that's that. I'll place that parlay. You probably won't hit, but if the Jets get everything to break their way, that would be fantastic. All right. Is there anything else in the playoffs that we want to talk about? I mean, I think we've kind of touched on it. But obviously a win this Sunday would be nice. But even if they go out there and Zach Wilson doesn't play well and they lose, you better hope Mike White heals up those ribs in time for Thursday Night Football because the Jets will then be in that position where it's like we have to win out. And if we win out, we can make the playoffs, assuming the Dolphins lose the Bills, which is no sure thing. But I do like the chances of them losing that game. So I guess that's it for playoffs, Michael. What are some of the other pieces of news? Yes, Will Parks was cut. It does sound like it was a bit of roster gymnastics, so maybe by the time you're listening to this, he's already back on the team, and that joke won't play. But yeah, I can't imagine they'd be getting rid of him full time. Great special teamer. They put him in at linebacker at times in their big nickel packages. Valuable guy. Quinnen, Did not practice all week. Saleh said there's still a chance. It's 50-50 for the D lineman, but I would say he's not going to play. And I don't think, I mean, I don't know anything, but I don't think he plays against the Jags either. I bet you we don't see Quinnen until Seattle, and maybe that's Quinnen and Mike White both coming back. Corey Davis also out, and that's a big one because we know that that's Zach's favorite receiver. It'll be interesting to see how Zach's chemistry is with Elijah Moore. Now that Elijah's back kind of involved in the offense, we've kind of seen what he looks like when he's producing. I do wonder if Zach's able to get that chemistry going, and he's going to have to with Corey Davis out. I think that's pretty much all the news from this week. I guess we'll just hop right into the game. Oh, have any thoughts from the last game? I mean, obviously, Mike White's not going to play, but against the Bills, is there any, now that you went back and watched the film, is there anything about Mike White's performance or any of the other guys on the team that stood out to you in a good or bad way?
I guess we'll briefly speak about Mike White, despite the fact that he's not playing this week.
He's still on the team.
I thought he's really, yeah, he is still on the team.
He might be the quarterback for playoffs, Michael. We got to talk about him still.
Still 100% true. Yeah, I think it was another very good game from him. Just it was the type of game where I feel like the quarterback had to do a lot for the offense to move the ball. Because protection was obviously not very good. We know that. The separation wasn't great. The blitzes that the Bills were dialing up were very effective. So he had to make tight throws down the field consistently, often on 3rd and long. The run game also wasn't good to create some of those 3rd and longs. And he just made big-time throw after big-time throw to keep the Jets moving and give them a chance. And, did they win? No. Did they put up points? No. But I think there are many reasons above Mike White why those things didn't happen, like some of the ones I just mentioned. And without him playing as good as he did, I'm not sure they would have scored at all. So, and then now you add in the fact that we know he's playing through fractured ribs, and it just adds even more to how impressive his performance was. So I was really impressed with him, and I guess this is another subject we'll get into later, but I love the way he played through 3 games, and I think it's still his job. So, I mean, yeah, like I said, we'll probably discuss that more, but I really liked how he played.
How do you handle that if we're getting to the hypotheticals here? Let's say White's out the next 2 games. So it's going to be the Zach Wilson show against the Lions and the Jags. Zach Wilson goes out there and wins both those games and plays reasonably well. Let's not say that he's going to go out there and look like Patrick Mahomes, but let's say we get, like a Dolphins type game, kind of run game, but manages the game and the Jets win in dominant fashion against the Lions. And let's say against the Jags, he looks like he did against the Jags last year, a good game, and they win. Do you think they turn back to White? I think they probably do, right? But it's tough because if you have back-to-back, it's easy to say that now, but if you think about if the Jets go out there and win 2 games with Zach Wilson and then they're entering that Seahawks game, playoffs look a lot more likely. Number 2 pick, maybe he has some momentum. Is there any thought in your head about keeping him in there? Obviously, we'd have to see it, and this is a hypothetical. But do you think that regardless of what happens with Zach, it's the Mike White show?
Yeah, it is hard to kind of sit here and discuss it because there's so many factors to it that we got to kind of see play out. But I think for me, I guess the basic way I would describe it is unless he's great, not good, I'd probably go back to Mike White. Because, even if they win both games and he's okay or solid like he was against, the Dolphins or maybe some of his late games last year, like I still think Mike White was well beyond that. Like he was playing really, really good. So
what's great? What's great for Zach Wilson?
I guess like in terms of numbers or maybe like a previous game he had.
Or just any, like, just what, what is that line for you to be like, all right, Zach, you can play the last 2 games.
I guess like
including that one against Miami, which will be for playoffs.
Yeah, I guess I'd compare it to what Mike White was doing these past 3 games because for me, like I think Mike White went beyond what we thought he was going to be, like just game managing, capitalizing on easy stuff. Like he was really elevating the team at times with some of the throws he was making and the way he was handling the pressure. I don't know if the last 2 games would have been close without him playing to the level that he did. So to me, that's what I think I'm comparing it to because I think we know Mike White can take advantage of good circumstances and keep you in the game. If the defense is playing well, the offense is playing well, all that stuff. So if Zach is just doing that, not really doing much beyond it, I think you go back to Mike White because I feel confident he could do that and add to it. But if Zach Wilson is, like really playing up to his ceiling as a number 2 pick, and he's making plays outside the pocket, creating his own offense, he's scrambling using his legs, he's throwing down the field, and finding ways to elevate the team, then I would consider it. And obviously, if they win those games as well, because if he has the momentum going and he's also matching some of the ceiling that I think White showed, then you could roll with it. But like they're just winning games and he's okay, then I think you go back to White, because just the way he was playing was really exciting to me. I think it kind of raised the ceiling of what the Jets were capable of, with his ability to hit some of those tight window throws and handle pressure and go through progressions so quickly. So for me, I want to see Wilson play great if I'm going to stick with him.
Yeah, I mean, there is a scenario here, and it would be a great problem for the Jets to have, but 2 bad defenses in the Lions and the Jags. And look, I mean, they have their players, and the Lions are hot right now, and the Jags, they play too. I might regret that statement if they come out and beat us. But okay, two bad defenses. Zach Wilson, let's say he goes out there and he has 2 of the best games of his career, right? Which isn't necessarily out of the ballpark. I mean, he's out of the realm of possibility. He's had 3 weeks to sit. He's already lost his job. I like the way he described how he's approaching this game mentally. He's like, the worst that could happen to me has already happened to me. So I'm just going to go out there and try to have fun and play loose. So maybe he comes out there, he plays loose, bad defenses. He has the only bad defense he's really played all year is what? The Steelers. And that was
probably
probably
his best.
The
Packers are a pretty low-ranked team.
Yeah, but I mean, they're secondary.
Miami's defense is not good.
That's okay, but that's different though. The Packers, I mean, the Packers have Jair Alexander. I mean, they have players. It's like the Lions have Aiden Hutchinson and Ramirez and Okuda. They have like a few guys, but I just feels like the Lions and Jags are 2 teams that it's possible. I'm not saying this will happen. Obviously, we're hoping for this to happen, but let's just say he goes out there and he plays well and he has 2 300-yard games where the Jets win. I still don't even know if I'm more confident in him the last 2 games of the season, especially that Miami game, than I would be with Mike White. Because what Mike White was doing was against, the Bears are a bad defense, but 2 of the top teams in the NFL, going into Buffalo, the toughness that he showed, and then going into Minnesota, and obviously Minnesota on paper didn't have a good defense, but they played a hell of a game, and all those high-level tight window throws.
Right.
It's like it would really, like you said, I think it would really take some high-level quarterbacking. Not even Zach running the offense and moving him up and down the field and they score, for me to feel like he gives them the best chance to win. I think it would really take 2 big performances from Zach to feel that way, even if they win and he plays well.
Yeah. Yeah, and it goes beyond like what just the numbers are, because even Mike White the last 2 games, if you just looked at his numbers, in some ways, because obviously he had total passing yards or whatever, but he didn't have the passing touchdowns or the points or the passer rating or any of that stuff. So regardless of what his stats are, you watched Mike White these last 2 games, you're like, this guy is lifting the team up right now, and that's what was really exciting. So if Zach Wilson's able to do the same thing the next 2 weeks, even if it is against the Lions and Jags, and they're playing better recently, both of these defenses and teams overall. So if he's able to do that, you watch him and you're like, okay, he's finally hitting his groove. He's making big throws. He's coming through on 3rd and long. He's hitting tight window completions. He's throwing deep passes. He's handling the pressure well. All this stuff where you're lifting the offense and lifting the team. Then I think you could say, all right, let's ride it, because then you're kind of matching what Mike White was doing. And he also Zach Wilson has more perceived upside as a 2nd overall pick, younger guy, more physical traits. Then they're kind of on the same plane. But like we said, like they're just winning and he runs the offense, whatever, but there isn't a lot of special stuff to it when you're just watching it. Then I think Mike White still has the edge because of how good that body of work was that he gave you over the 3 games he played, especially, like you said, with the Vikings game on the road, 10-win team. Despite not being a great defense, they did cover very well in that game. And then going in Buffalo in that weather against that defense and with the hits he was taking, he won huge points for me in that game. So, I'm leaning Mike White. I think it's a pretty high bar for Zach Wilson to secure that job once White is ready.
Now, while on paper, I just said Lions aren't a good defense, I think this is a perfect test for Zach Wilson because the Lions are good at what Zach Wilson is not, Lions
Right.
have been great against the quick passing game. They play a lot of cover one. I'll let you break this down in a second, but it's kind of the perfect opportunity for Zach to play a bad team that does the things that he's struggled with. And so maybe he can kind of build some of that momentum so that when he plays a good team that does these same things like New England, maybe he's a little bit better off. How do the Lions match up for Zach Wilson in your eyes?
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup because of exactly what you said. It's talent wise and in terms of how they've produced this year, it obviously hasn't been a good defense. They're 32nd in scoring right now. I think they're 24th in DVOA on defense. So not a good defense, but the way they play is suited to stop Zach Wilson. They do the things that he struggled against, and this year it's been man coverage. It's been cover one specifically that really has caused them a lot of problems, particularly in those two Patriots games. And the Lions do a lot of similar things to what the Patriots do. Very similar numbers in terms of the coverages and types of schemes that they run. They're a very high man coverage team, high cover one team, and those are things you look at Zach Wilson's numbers, and he's been really bad against those particular splits. Whereas, against zone coverage, against other types of schemes besides cover one, he's been still subpar, but not quite as much as against those other things. So, it's interesting because they are, I think you're going to see a defense that looks like the Patriots, but also it's not as talented. So it's an opportunity for him to see those things, but also build some confidence against it, considering it's, not as much talent as the Patriots might throw at you, or, as solid coaching as Belichick may have established. And then another thing the Lions do.
Hey, don't shit on former Jet Aaron Glenn, who's the defensive coordinator for the Lions.
That's true, but hey, lots to prove here. I still see a 31 in that scoring ranking, so got to get that up. But another thing the Lions like to do is blitz heavy, like 6+ rusher blitzes. They use a lot of those. Over 11% of their snaps, they send at least 6 rushers. The league average is only about 6%, so they do it almost twice as frequently as the average team.
Sounds perfect for Zach.
Perfect for Zach Wilson. He's only 4 for 11 with 3 sacks and a 19 passer rating against those blitzes this season. So he's had a lot of trouble with those all-out blitzes, and the Lions do utilize those quite frequently. So, yeah, that's what makes it so interesting, because it's very easy to look at the Lions and say, perfect, you're at home against a bad defense here, great way to come back. But then you look at the way the Lions play, and you're like, this kind of is just like the Patriots here, just obviously less talented. So we'll see if he can take advantage of that and maybe start to work on some of these weaknesses by exploiting a lesser talented version of some of the things that have exploited him this year.
And Mina Kimes had a really great tweet where she kind of noted a lot of what you're saying, where she was saying, obviously the formula for a good game for Zach Wilson has been that quick passing attack. And she had the numbers. She was like, since week 9, the Lions rank first in EPA per play, first in QBR, and first in yards per attempt. And like you said, this isn't a matchup that was
against quick throws, right?
Yeah, sorry, against throws under 2.5 seconds. My bad.
So that's tough.
Yeah, on paper, this Lions defense doesn't look that good, but then when you dig into the matchup, because we've had some of those, it's like, oh, this team looks good, but we dig into the matchup and we like how the Jets match up against them. This is kind of the opposite. And the same goes for the Jets defense versus the Lions offense. We'll get to that in a second. What do you think the Lions will try to do to Zach? Do you think it's just going to be from the gates, just start sending hell at him, try to confuse him, send as many blitzes as possible?
Yeah, I think so. And really, it's interesting with Zach Wilson, and all the defenses he faced kind of follow the same formula. Even teams that don't typically use a lot of cover one and man coverage have kind of boosted it and played more when they faced him, because it's kind of been an established formula that's worked ever since last year. And he hasn't proven that it doesn't work yet. He hasn't forced teams out of it. So I think from Zach Wilson's perspective, I think this is the game to kind of play loose and really pull that trigger in this game, because this is another team that's going to play that way. They're going to have a single high safety. They're going to play man against you. They're going to blitz you a lot, and they're going to challenge you. They're going to say, we don't think you can beat us. Prove to us that you can. And I think he's just got to, like he said in that press conference, he said you brought it up. The worst has happened already, and he's just going to let loose and have fun out there. And I like that mentality. I think that's what he's going to have to do to play well in this one. Because you even look at that last game he played against the Patriots. The deep shots were there. There were open opportunities to air that ball out. And I know it wasn't the most favorable conditions, but you look at the Denzel Mims post route that was wide open. He didn't throw. There's the Garrett Wilson that he could have, and that one was tougher because there was some pressure, but it was open. He could have anticipated that. That was a deep shot he missed. So the Jets were dialing up some shots for him in that last Patriots game to exploit this kind of coverage, but he just didn't have the confidence at that point to take them. So it seemed like he was still in that mindset of, I'm not going to lose this game. I'm not going to make that big mistake. So maybe now with his back against the wall, everyone against him, the worst has already happened. He's been benched. You're playing another defense like this that's going to man up and give you those shots. Maybe now this is when he just gets out there and pulls the trigger like he did at BYU, and he was just throwing dimes down the field with full confidence, play after play. So maybe this is the right circumstances for him to be the quarterback he was destined to be. And I think he has to try and be that kind of quarterback if he's going to succeed in this game. I don't know if, especially because the numbers you brought up with that great tweet, I think it's, I don't know if the Bills' strategy, from that win is going to work in this game. No. I think it's got to be aggressive.
Yeah, it's the way the Lions play is intimidating, but there's a weakness to it. And I will say,
right,
obviously Zach Wilson was not good this season. He had his moments, but he wasn't good. But I do think that the last game that he played, I think, is skewing how some people see him. I don't think it's impossible for him to go out there and have a good game. And I think that the best example to look at is the first half of that Patriots game, of the first game that they lost. And he still threw an interception right at the end of the half or whatever. But right before that interception, up until that point, I was thinking to myself, wow, this is the best we've seen Zach Wilson look. And Michael Floor even said that was the best half of football that he's played as a New York Jet. Same Patriots defense, obviously Bill Belichick getting after him. But what was Zach Wilson doing differently? He was playing loose. He was playing freely. Like you said, he wasn't playing with hesitation. He wasn't playing not to lose. And up until that interception, he had taken care of the ball. Obviously, the wheels came off in the second half. And then the second game, he played way too scared. But in that first game, you saw a deep shot to Garrett Wilson. You saw him throwing up the seams to the tight end. You saw him going through reads. The throw that he made to Conklin in the red zone for the touchdown was money. So that is the type of game plan I think you're going to see from the Jets. Like you said, I do think they're going to try to throw deep down the field a number of times. The problems come if your O-line can't hold up. But the one thing that Zach Wilson does bring that Mike White doesn't is that mobility and that ability to keep players alive. Obviously, it got him in trouble at times, many times this year. But you're hoping that watching Mike White be in his exact same shoes and run this offense and the importance of playing within rhythm and going through his progressions and staying in the pocket, you're hoping, it's only been a few weeks, that some of that rubbed off on him. And then he can also bring that ability to, when there is an open rusher flying up the middle and Mike White would probably just take the sack, Zach can make that guy miss and either run for yards, throw it away, or maybe somebody breaks loose. Maybe we'll finally see that improvisational ability turn into something big for the Jets. But it is an intriguing matchup because it's, as we said, they do everything that he struggled against, but they're still not a good defense. So it's a good test for him. And if he can't do it against this Lions defense, the concerns are still there. And I think they're trying to wheel Mike White out there on Thursday night as fast as possible. They might have to get a fake doctor to clear him. But if Zach Wilson goes out there and loses this Lions game, as we said, it won't sink the season. If the Bills beat the Dolphins, they'll still be in that, all right, win 3 straight, you're in the playoffs mode, but it'll be, all right, we need Mike White. So, and he also, it's like, I don't know if I want to see the Trevor Lawrence for Zach Wilson primetime if Wilson goes out there and loses on Sunday, but we'll see. I think I'm a little more optimistic than you, surprised, but I'm not setting my, sights on Zach Wilson having a 300-yard game. I think that he can have the type of game that he had against the Dolphins earlier this season, where it's just like run the ball with Bam Knight, play great defense. You have to throw it down the field so it'll look a little different. You want to see some of the elements you saw from that first Pats game, but just control the game. Don't be timid, but just don't lose the game for the Jets. And I think finding that line has been tough for Zach, and hopefully we get to see that. What do you think? Is there anything in particular Zach needs to do? Obviously, we talked about he has to throw with anticipation, he has to play loose, but do you want to see him use his legs more? Do you want to see him scramble against this Lions defense? We saw what Justin Fields did to them. Is there anything in particular that after the break you're hoping Zach Wilson comes back and shows?
I think anticipation you brought up, that's a really good one. And he has shown flashes of that this year. There are some good anticipation throws, especially on that Pittsburgh film. So that's something I would like to see improve because it's something Mike White did really well. And I think it unlocked some facets of this offense that weren't there previously with his ability to just uncork passes before receivers were making their breaks. I think it allowed him to, especially on out-breaking throws, like out routes. You look at this Bills game, how many times he hit Garrett Wilson across the field from the opposite hash. I think 4 times on third down he hit Garrett Wilson, one of those. So he's bringing new dimensions with the anticipation. So I would like to see Zach show some of that as well. I just want to see him be more confident pulling the trigger. It seems like he had to really be 100% confident something was wide open to throw the ball on his reads this year, because like there are just plays where he should be able to see, like the Mims play against New England is what comes to mind the most for me, because that should be easy money. That should be 6, and you should win that game off of that by itself.
Which one exactly? Most listeners don't have the photographic memory that you do, Michael.
Yeah, it was when
and I'll also ask for myself, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, do you remember Mims ran that post and he was wide open, and he passed on it and he scrambled?
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so like plays like that, I just want to see him pull that trigger. And like obviously we want to see him protect the ball 100%. And I think you can be aggressive and protect the ball at the same time. Mike White has shown how you can do that, because when you're decisive and confident, I think you could get it through tight windows. And even if you are being aggressive, maybe even borderline reckless, when you're confident and decisive, especially when you have the velocity Zach Wilson has, which probably is an advantage over Mike White, you can get those throws into any window you want. It's really just frankly, the stupid interceptions that Zach Wilson has to get rid of, because most of his interceptions are avoidable, especially the latter 2 of that first Patriots game. So most of his interceptions are just those simple ones that you could throw away, but you could still play aggressive within the structure of the offense and protect the ball at the same time if you're decisive. And this is something Robbie Sabo has said when talking about Zach Wilson, but sometimes when you're playing to avoid turnovers, it makes you more likely to turn it over, because your indecisiveness leads to hesitancy, and that will cause inaccuracy. It will cause you to be late, and that's when the turnovers happen. So when you're decisive and aggressive, I think the turnovers will be limited, and you'll also get more out of your arm talent. So just decisiveness and aggression within the structure is what I would say I want to see the most.
How much do you think they run the ball in this one? I mean, on the surface, you'd say let this be the Bam Knight game, but the Lions did a hell of a job with Dalvin Cook last week. How do you see the run-pass balance shaping up in this one?
Yeah, like you brought that up. I think the Vikings had 22 rushing yards last week. So
on 15 carries.
Yeah, the Lions have turned up their run defense recently. They played the Jaguars the game before that and held them under 100. But on the season, I'm looking at the Lions' run defense numbers, still 29th in yards per carry at 5.0, which is a pretty bad number. Justin Fields definitely racked it up in one game. But earlier in the season, they got run on by a few other teams. So I still think that run defense is an enticing matchup for the Jets. And it's just how they won games this year. Pretty much all their wins. And that's both, with Breece Hall and post Breece Hall. Running the football is a big part of every win they've had this year for the most part. And that's just their formula. I think that's how they want to play. So Bam Knight's been awesome recently, just breaking tackles. And I would lean into that. And, we'll see how the game flow plays out, because the Lions are an elite offense. And there is a potential to where, you have to get in a shootout with them and keep up with them. So you have to pass the ball and keep up with them. But at the same time, I think you trust your defense to keep you in the game. Like we saw in the Bills victory, Jets were down 14-3 in that one, but they stuck with the run game, and eventually it paid off later on. because the defense kept them in the game and allowed the Jets to feel like they didn't have to panic and get into catch-up mode to stay in the game. So I would like to see them stay at the run game this one. That's not to say don't let Zach Wilson try to get some confidence going, but a good balance would be key here because I think you can run the ball on this Lions defense, and Bam Knight has really been cooking recently, so I'd like to see him get some touches.
Let's talk about some matchups on the offensive side of the ball. What are some of them that stand out to you? Because as daunting as this might seem for Zach Wilson, I will say I love the opportunity for Garrett Wilson in this one to have a big one.
Yeah, it's a great Garrett Wilson matchup. Lions have given up the most receiving yards per game to number one receivers this year, about 92 a game. So they've been susceptible to that. Their cornerback unit is very poor. It's probably the worst in the league. They've given up the most yards per cover snap by a wide margin of any cornerback unit. So very susceptible on the outside. So no Corey Davis, but this is a cornerback unit you could beat up on. So I like Garrett Wilson in this one, and we'll see how the Lions cover him. Maybe he demands some respect this week. Maybe they bracket him, find ways to take him out of the game plan. But I'm looking for that Elijah Moore breakout game. I've been waiting, and we had the 6 for 60 this last game, something like that. So it was his first solid overall. I know he had the Bears game, but like consistently involved game in a while. But I'm looking for a game like he had against the Dolphins last year, and he really is the focal point of the offense because I think Garrett Wilson's going to be keyed in on in this game with Corey Davis out, and Elijah Moore is going to get some man-to-man matchups against a very weak cornerback unit. So let's see if he can get cooking. It's about time, and the Jets really need it at this point. So I like Elijah Moore. I think this could be the game that we've been waiting for.
When they go 12 personnel and they just have two receivers, with Davis out, with Berrios' struggles, with some of Mims' struggles, do you think we see some 12 personnel where it's Moore and Wilson as the two receivers?
Yeah, I think we could see that, and it's very interesting how they manage some of those other receivers because Berrios has struggled. I've been vocal about that. I wrote an article about that, and we all know he's had some opportunities in the red zone he couldn't come up with the past couple weeks. But Corey Davis is out. Someone has to get snaps. Denzel Mims has been struggling. He hasn't been great in contested situations. There was one route last week where he's kind of jogging on it, and then Mike White targeted him, and he lost the contested catch. So he hasn't had the best, production when he's been in there either. So, yeah, maybe they do run some, they have that 12 personnel. Just stick with Wilson and Moore. Forget the run blocking. Just get your best talent on the field. And speaking of the tight ends.
Yeah, sorry, but I guess the only issue with that is that neither of them have really played the Z that much, meaning that Elijah Moore started the season as the X receiver, Garrett Wilson was the slot, and then they flipped them. So neither of them have had to be that Z, that Corey Davis role. We've seen Mims slide into it. But I do feel like if you're going to put your best offense out there, I do think you can make an argument for it being 12 personnel in this one, especially with how much you said like the Lions are going to try to blitz Zach and send 6+ rushers. Having the tight ends in there will help the passing game. It's like I want to see that package with your two best receivers in Moore and Wilson. Sorry, you're going to say something about the tight ends?
No, I agree. I think that's a good idea. And in terms of the tight ends, I feel like Tyler Conklin's got to be more involved in this passing game. And by that, I mean like running routes, being a focal point because
red zone.
All he really does, red zone. I feel like all he does is kind of run, block and release or in the flat, being a safety blanket. Like this guy can run routes. He can beat linebackers and safeties. He's got really good short area quickness. He's just sharp with his breaks. You saw in that first Patriots game, like 2 very nice red zone touchdowns where they're self-created with a great route. So I want to see a lot more of him. I feel like in the red zone, he just doesn't really get the opportunities that he should, especially Corey Davis is out. We're trying to help Zach Wilson ease in here, give him a bigger target, a reliable underneath target. So
he's got that jump ball ability.
He's got that jump ball ability. I want to see Conklin get more opportunities to run routes and be a primary read and just be isolated against defenders because he can win. He can create offense, and I want to see some more of it.
Yeah, Conklin really is. I mean, the Jets need somebody else on offense to step up behind Garrett Wilson and behind Bam Knight. They need another receiving option out there because a good defense, is going to be able to take away your best receiver. They're going to key in on Garrett Wilson, and then you're going to have to find somebody else. And while we'd hope that would be Elijah Moore, getting the tight ends involved would be a fantastic idea. I guess. Oh, one more matchup I do want to talk about: Aiden Hutchinson, Dwayne Brown, youth versus experience. How do you like that one? How do you see that one shaping out?
That's an interesting matchup for sure. Hutchinson plays on that right side, so he should get some of Dwayne Brown. Another interesting guy, actually, for the Lions, kind of a recent breakout star for them. James Houston, undrafted free agent. He's kind of their version of Bryce Huff. Situational pass rusher, only plays, like the passing situations. He's got 4 sacks in 3 games. He's got some crazy reps on film already. Basically, the Lions' Bryce Huff. He also will play on that right side against Dwayne Brown in those pass situations. So he's another guy to look out for. So the Lions' defense recently has still not been great, but I guess not as bad as it was early in the season. So they are capable of being a little more competent than maybe given credit for. And Houston's a part of that. So watch out for him in those passing situations.
Yeah, going back and watching that Bills game, it didn't really seem like guys were getting beat as much as it was like miscommunication. And the floor had talked about unscouted pressure looks in their play action game. That's really kind of what screwed them. So the O-line is going to be big in this one. Like you said, how much Detroit blitzes. They're going to need a big George Fant game. New friend of the pod. I can finally say that.
Yep.
Cool guy. What a cool guy he was. That was
awesome.
Fun. I'm glad we got to talk some uniforms with him. That was really all we really cared about.
That was great.
Yeah.
Just the fact that we talk about it all the time now. Get to with one of the starters on the team.
Yeah, we get to show
chop it up, some uniforms.
Exactly.
The fact that he asked us our favorite, that is awesome.
Yeah, we get to show him how lame we are, Michael. How into
exactly
to the uniforms we are. I saw you also. I tweeted out. I know we saved the uniforms for the end, but briefly, you tweeted out a photo of green on black.
Yeah,
green jerseys, black pants.
I made a nice green on black edit. I was like,
burn it.
I think the fans are gonna love this. It's gonna be nice hip uniform, but apparently that is not the case. Go take a look at the ratio on that tweet.
Yeah,
not pretty.
Looks gross.
I love that. I love that combo though. I would like to see it.
Yeah, you're wearing the Adam Gay sweatshirt too, so I don't know.
Yeah, so don't listen to my fashion sense.
Yeah, I think the one combo could work is black jersey.
Adam Gay sweatshirt right here.
There we go. Oh god, Jesus, just bad memories. That just looks like QB1
as sweatshirt though. It's unfortunate that Adam Gase had to put a stain on it.
Let's talk about the defense. Also an intimidating matchup for the Jets for 2 reasons, kind of combined. Detroit has a great offensive line, and the Jets probably won't have Quinnen Williams. And we've talked about this before. The style of defense the Jets play, rushing 4, playing coverage, having to win with those 4, only works when you're winning that battle in the trenches. And I don't mean to say anything. Detroit, as bad as they've been at times this year, I know they've turned it around. We should stop talking about Detroit like other teams talk about. It's the same thing people talk about the Jets. It's like, all right, this is actually a good team this year. But Detroit has a hell of an offensive line. They've really put an emphasis on building through the trenches, and they've played well there. And the Lions' offense as a whole has been good, but they're scary because I don't think the Jets have faced an offensive line like this all season. And if they start that game, Michael, and Jared Goff's getting 3-4 seconds to throw and they're not getting any push, it could be a long day. Could definitely be a long day.
I mean, this Lions offensive line, I think, is the main reason the Lions are the good team that they are right now, because you break it down, like it's their offense more so than the defense. Then you look at the offense and you scan the talent they have, and it's like, they have some pieces. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's a star now. But beyond that, they trade TJ Hawkinson. They don't really, their second receiver is Josh Reynolds. The running back duo is good, but again, having replaced Hawkinson, then at quarterback you have Jared Goff, who coming into the season, most people probably think he's mediocre at best. So it doesn't look like a top 5 offense if you just look at those skill positions. So it's that offensive line that is really pushing them over the top, putting all those guys in position to play great football, because the pass protection is clean. It lets Goff do what he does without having to worry about making people miss or making throws under pressure. And the run game, the holes in the run game are just fantastic. They're right up there in terms of yards before contact. They're fourth in yards before contact per carry on non-quarterback runs, and they're third in the percentage of their rushing yards that come before contact. So basically, that's saying the offensive line is what makes the run game go. There are big holes, and that's how they're getting the rushing yards. So it's huge if Quinnen Williams doesn't play because he's the anchor of that run defense. He is the guy who eats up blocks, clogs gaps, and makes it easier for the linebackers to rally, for the edge defenders to get in there and make plays. And if he's not in there, you're looking at Nathan Shepard and Solomon Thomas kind of getting increases in snaps. And Shepard's in the passing, I'd be less worried in the passing game than in the run game if Quinnen didn't play, because Shepard's kind of improved his pass rushing recently. I think he's ready to make some plays as a pass rusher. Obviously a downgrade, but I think he's ready to make some plays as a pass rusher. But in the run game, still haven't seen the greatest from those two reserve defensive tackles, and I don't think either of those guys are replicating Quinnen's ability to do all those things I just said, like just the dirty work in the run game to prevent those holes from being created. Both of them still struggle with shooting gaps too aggressively. We've seen teams kind of use gap runs against the Jets more frequently in recent weeks, like the Bills did. I think the Bears did it a little bit, the Vikings as well. Just kind of punishing that aggression in terms of shooting the gaps with the defensive tackles. So if Quinnen's out against this Lions offensive line, it's going to be tough, and the defensive tackles are really going to have to step up and do a good job of clogging those gaps and making sure huge holes aren't created in the run game for those Lions running backs. So Quinnen Williams would be a huge loss if he's not out there.
Yeah, I think a lot of Jets fans, including myself, look at this game and say, all right, the Lions have gotten hot. They have a great offense, but it's Jared Goff on the road in 35-degree weather. It should be sunny, but it'll be a cold winter day on the road.
He does have historically bad cold weather numbers. It's worth noting.
I was gonna spin it into like a positive Jared Goff thing, but yeah, let's talk about some of the net. I'll just give you what are your thoughts on Jared Goff does he scare you with all these weapons he has?
I mean, I think maybe scared is a little bit too over the top, but you have to respect the production he's putting up. I mean, he is the quarterback of this top 5 scoring team, and his production, I mean, he's protected the ball, he's been consistent, and he's allowed this offense to be efficient. So I think the Lions have just complemented him really well with the pass protection they have. It allows him to just sit back there and be the quarterback that he is, a pocket passer. And he's been able to thrive this year. So I wouldn't say he's, scary. Maybe that's a little over the top. But if you're not going to create pressure, he will sit back there and put up points and lead efficient drives against you. Absolutely. So it's all about that pressure against this good offensive line of the Lions. And like we said, Quinnen Williams being out would hurt a lot. But the Jets do still have plenty of weapons and plenty of money invested into this defensive line to be able to compete against offensive lines like this one, even if Quinnen Williams doesn't play. But yeah, Jared Goff will do damage against you if you can't get pressure.
Here's my gut feeling about what this defense does on Sunday. I think they're going to come out, and I think they're going to try to play the same style of defense they've been playing all year. Rush 4, play back, quarters coverage. Not going to do I mean, they'll go into their man looks or whatever, but I think if it doesn't go well in the first quarter, they're going to make that adjustment to say, all right, time to load the box, stop Swift and Jamal Williams, get after Goff, send some pressure. Obviously the last time I can really remember, I know they've blitzed a few times this year, but the last big blitz I can remember that really just comes to mind is that one against the Bengals where it cost him on the touchdown, and it was Quinnen who was getting mad at Coach Whitecotton where he was like, just let us trust this defensive line. Well, now Quinnen's out. So now you can make an argument like, hey, maybe the Jets shouldn't just sit back and play the style of defense. Maybe they're going to have to change some stuff up. And one of the things we liked about Robert Saleh when they hired him was he showed an ability to adapt his defense in 2020 because the 49ers didn't have the personnel to run what they were running in 2019, and they still got good results. Do you think they're going to come out with the same style of defense they've been playing all year, or do you think they and change it if it doesn't go well, or do you think they're going to come out and say, all right, we're going to have to get after Jared Goff in this game. We're going to have to stop the run, load the box, and send some heat, and trust these corners.
Yeah, I could see that at this point. I mean, it's all hands on deck. It's win or go home time here in December. So I think, and your best pass rusher is out. So I could definitely see that. I mean, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you see this game kind of playing out as sort of maybe even similar to that Bears structure, to where, maybe defense struggles a little bit early and then picks it up as it goes on? Maybe not similar to the Bears game, because obviously Lions are much better. But do you see that kind of game structure to where, maybe the Jets give up first quarter touchdown, maybe 14 points, and then maybe settle in from there?
Well, I think that's been the common theme for this defense. It's the same thing for the 49ers. They get better as the game goes on. They're fresher because they rotate as much. They make great adjustments as much as possible. They make great adjustments. I do think that they'll get better as the game goes on. I certainly hope they don't come out slow. I do hope that they can come out and stifle this Lions offense. The importance of a good start in this one can't be understated, because if they come out there and the Lions go right down the field and score a touchdown, and Zach Wilson goes 3 and out and takes a big sack or throws an interception, not only are the boos going to be raining in, but I think mentally for the team it might be tough, because they lost the quarterback they've all kind of bought into. Their best player isn't out there. It could be tough. The wheels could come off in this one if they don't have a good start. But on the flip side of things, if they come out there and let's say they create a big turnover early, or they really stifle Goff in the first quarter or the first half, and Wilson goes out there and leads a few touchdown drives, then the good vibes are flowing. They'll be playing with confidence. They'll know they're the better team, even not at full strength. And I don't see the Jets. If the Jets come out to a big lead, I don't see them really losing it. The Lions could be tough to come back against, though.
Right. That's a
so
good way to put
it. They need a good start. And if they don't have a great start, the defense can't get whooped in the first. It's like, okay, if Zach is going to come out there and you're seeing the same Zach that we've seen for the most of the season, and maybe they have a score drive, but it's just a lot of 3 and outs and sacks, and maybe throws an interception, whatever. If that's the type of half you're getting from Zach Wilson, the defense really can't give up a few scoring drives. I mean, yeah, they're gonna have to put the game on their shoulders. And the thing that I like about this matchup, though, is yes, Quinnen's the Jets' best player. Yes, he's the heart of this team and this defensive line, but Jets have some damn good corners. They don't have to play this way. They have the luxury to be flexible with how they play. They can go and load the box. They can rush, and they can say, you know what? We're going to play some cover one ourselves. We'll play some man defense. I don't know how out of tendency they'll get. I like that we're going to get we'll see how much Jameson Williams plays. It's his 3rd game. Michael, how many? You said he only got like 13 snaps last
13?
game.
Yeah, I think 13 last game.
So I anticipate to see a little bit more Jameson Williams. Maybe we get the rematch of him and Sauce back from that Alabama Cincinnati game. But Amon-Ra has been fantastic all year. But DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner, you put them up against anybody, and that's the thing I'm clinging to in this game, because offensively it looks like somewhat an intimidating matchup. Although I do have some faith that Zach will put together a solid performance. But this defense against the offense almost scares me more because of how good the Lions' offensive line is, the weapons they have, and no Quinnen. But the thing that I'm clinging to is DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner. So let's talk about some matchups in this one for the defensive side of the football. Obviously, I don't know, the Jets play their sides, so they'll line up against all these guys. But Reed and Gardner versus Amon-Ra versus Jameson Williams versus DJ Shark versus Josh Reynolds, that's a big one. That really will decide this game. In a lot of ways. What are some of the other ones that stand out to you?
Well, yeah, first talk about those corners. I mean, the corners really have been the heart and soul of this team this year. And the pass rush has been awesome, but I feel like I would put the corners ahead of the pass rush, because I think just game to game this year, a lot of coverage sacks. I just think the consistency from week to week, it feels like every game the corners have been a plus. There have been some pass rush ups and downs, maybe a little disappointing at times, but corners feels like every single game they are outperforming expectations. How many times do they play a star receiver and you're like, oh, that guy only had 30 yards, 40 yards this game when he had 160, 150 the game before that or whatever. So it feels like they always hold it down. They help out the pass rush, and they just prevent those big plays over the top to a really awesome level. So that's going to be big in this one, because, we're talking about the Jets pass rush against this offensive line, potentially without Quinn Williams. But if your corners can lock down, then it could buy that extra time to be the equalizer in that matchup up front, to maybe give them that extra split second they need to create that pressure, to get home for that sack, to force that bad throw. And I like the matchup for the corners here because St. Brown, he's awesome, and everyone's going to see some of him because he plays about split between the slot and outside. So he moves around a
big
lot.
MC. You know what? I did it again. You called me out on it last week. I left out Michael Carter II every time. It's corner trio.
Although maybe it's fair this week because he did have probably his roughest game, but one game doesn't.
He's gonna be big in this one.
Doesn't mitigate the season, but he'll be big in this one because St. Brown will be in that slot quite frequently. So all three corners are going to have a piece of their best receiver. But outside of that, and not to disrespect these guys because they made plenty of plays, but when you're looking at Khalif Raymond and Josh Reynolds, when this cornerback unit has been up to the task against Stephon Diggs, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, all these guys all season, and you're like, they can really lock these guys down. And it kind of reminds me of that Packers game when that's maybe the Jets' best defensive performance of the season or close to it. And a lot of it had to do with that cornerback unit and how dominant they were against those Packers receivers, a unit that, has maybe come on to this point with Christian Watson breaking out. But at that point was not really clicking. The Jets corners really dominated it. And I think outside of St. Brown, the Jets have a chance to do that in this one. The Lions don't have a tight end you have to worry about. So that's something that I think is a plus for the Jets because they don't have to worry about playing matchup with Sauce on the tight end, which they do a lot. He could focus on the outside. So I like the matchup here. I think despite the pass rush maybe having a tough matchup against this O-line, I think this coverage can really be the equalizer there. So that's going to be big. They need to have a dominant game, I think, to really help the Jets overcome the trenches and create some chances for big plays. And turnovers are a big part of it, too, because you look at since the bye, and the Jets pretty much haven't had a meaningful takeaway because the only one they've had since the bye is Mosley's interception against the Bears. And that game was over at that point. So I guess you can include the Jermaine's block punt in that. But actual turnovers, just the one since the bye. Got to get some more of those. So what do you think of the turnovers? I'm curious, what you think of that, because I'm trying to find reasons for why it's not happening because it feels like they get pressure, they cover well. Why aren't the turnovers there? So why don't you think they've been there, and what could they do better to get that number up?
Well, they played two really great offenses, and they first of all, they're terrible at falling on fumbles. That's one of the things. And then, I think a lot of turnovers, it does seem luck-oriented. Like, turnovers aren't one of those things that are consistent year to year, even with great defenses. Some years, look at a guy like, obviously it's not an entire defense, but like Darrelle Revis, I view him as the best corner of all time. His best seasons, a lot of times he didn't have many interceptions because people wouldn't throw at him. And I think it's similar to the Jets where it's like offenses kind of have to take what the defense is giving them when they play the Jets because they play that shell coverage, because they play back, and because they have great corners. And so you're facing a lot of offenses that are running, draws, screens, quick passes, stuff to the flat. A lot of easy, simple dink and dunk stuff, trying to just bleed the clock and get slowly up the field. And I think that style of play is less conducive to turnovers than the style of play of, a guy like, give me a better example. I'm trying to think of, somebody who's throwing deep, somebody who's playing carefree, who's an aerial attack, a vertical passing offense, who's going to take some of those chances. The Jets are scary to throw against. And so I think that's a big part of it. But I agree. I think they're due for turnovers. I think one thing to keep in mind, Sauce Gardner, Detroit kid, so it's his hometown team, and the Lions passed on him.
For sure. Yeah.
So I like the, not to get into the random predictions just yet, but I know I predicted it last week and didn't come through, but I like the Sauce Gardner interception random prediction. I do feel like a turnover is
quick note on the interceptions and like going off the point you were just saying and how, quarterbacks don't like to take a lot of chances against these corners. Like, I'm trying to think of like the routes that Reed and Gardner really get typically targeted on, and it feels like a very high percentage of them, at least relative to other corners, are straight go routes. Like, they get challenged on those a lot, and I feel like the reason that happens is because quarterbacks don't want to challenge them on like out routes or curl
Yeah.
routes. Like how often do we see them get challenged in those throws? Almost never,
No.
because their coverage on it is so tight. And we saw earlier in the year, Sauce picked off that one against Miami. That was a forget what exactly what that was, but it was something intermediate. I think it was an out route. But he had that. DJ Reed had that great pick against the Ravens. But their coverage on those routes is so good that it's just not really ever there. And that if they did get challenged, they probably would pick off some of them. But they just don't give those throws up. So the only times they get challenged is when the quarterback is like, all right, screw it. I'm going to throw up a bomb here because this probably isn't going to get picked off. Because go routes really don't get picked off that often. Usually it's, just broken up because it's such a
Yeah,
hard pass to actually catch. And it feels like they really only get challenged on those.
yeah, and if they do it, it kind of feels like a punt for the quarterback. I
Yeah,
think
exactly.
I think Sauce, one of the things that he can develop is some of his ball skills, but you almost don't want to mess with it too much because part of what makes him so great is that last punch that he has. You mentioned some of those go routes, some of those deep shots, and just the way that other fans get on him for. Well, that's Steven's a pass interference. He didn't turn around, and not knowing that face guarding is not a penalty. We've made that point in the pod plenty of times. But a lot of the way that Sauce covers those deep plays, those deep passes, some of those opportunities for him to get an interception is he doesn't turn around and look for the ball. He's playing the receiver, and when the ball comes in, he's knocking that thing out at the last second. We haven't really seen him too many times where he's looking at the ball. Where he's trying to make a play on it. He's had some in zone where it's in front of him, like his pick on Josh Allen, but those deep balls, he's not really looking for the pick. He's making sure he doesn't give up something, which I like that mentality. He's been flawless as a rookie. So if you look for anything, I would say, I don't know if he's the best ball hawk corner yet. I'm sure if they tried him on some of those out routes and those comebacks, we'd be getting more. And I do think he gets picked this Sunday, but if you're going to nitpick, and the other thing is the Jets safeties aren't ball hawks. They don't have a guy.
Jordan Whitehead has stones for hands. He cannot catch
stones
anything.
for hands, and Joyner, yeah, he's holding on, but he's not a ball hawk and safety either. If the Jets could add somebody in the offseason, I think their best ball hawk is actually MC squared. I think the stats would back that up as well. He's the guy that I feel like has the best natural ball skills. DJ Reed, I guess he's made some sick plays too, so maybe Reed, but Reed or Carter, who are two smaller guys. So I don't know. They can add a ball. They could use
a ball hawking safety for sure. That's a topic for another day. But yeah, on the Gardner ball skills, it's an interesting topic because it's like a fine line you want to walk because like the way he's playing right now, yes, he only has 2 picks, but outside of that, it's like near flawless, probably best corner in the league. Like most stats would back that up in terms of what he gives up. So it's like, do you want to tweak that at all and maybe get more interceptions because he's so darn good at the way he's playing right now. I just don't know if he'll ever be a huge interception guy. I think he'll stay in that 2 to 4 range. I don't know if he'll ever be like a 6, 7, 8 kind of guy because most of the guys who do get that many picks aren't nearly as solid as Sauce is at just flat out limiting production. Even like Tariq Woolen, and he's had a great season. It's not to take away from him, but he has I think 5 picks right now. But in terms of the coverage numbers, comparing him to Sauce, like he's not nearly as good. I think he has 5 or 6 touchdowns at this point.
Yeah,
similar amount of penalties. The yards I think is twice as much. So
it's also like Marcus Williams had like 6 picks.
Yeah, Marcus Williams 6 picks. So interceptions are very fluctuant and random and all that. So like they're great, but it's like the main thing I'm gonna judge a cornerback on is what are you giving up? And Sauce Gardner gives up less than anyone, so I'm totally cool with him. So yeah, it just feels like the turnovers, they've had some bad luck there, and hopefully it can normalize over these next few weeks. But in terms of other matchups for the Jets defense against the Lions offense, I know there's one that you wanted to talk about that we were discussing earlier, so you want to kind of get into that one?
It's not really a direct matchup as much as it's no Quinnen, great O-line, team that runs the football relatively well. I know Goff they pass a lot, but they have 2 great running backs in Swift and Jamal Williams, and the run game without Quinnen could really hurt him. CJ Mosley needs a big one. This is not that Joe Douglas would have given him that contract, but this is why you're paying CJ Mosley $19 million a year for this game. This is what he brings you, not just the leadership, but when Quinnen goes down, he is their best run defender outside of Quinnen. He's going to be charged with filling those gaps. The Lions are going to get a little tricky. They have great offensive linemen, and with great offensive linemen, they're going to run those poles, those traps. They're going to get confusing, And the one thing we've seen with this wide 9 defense is that it does seem fairly obvious what the Jets are going to do, and teams have tried to take advantage of that. So we need Mosley to have a big one. Any thoughts on Mosley, or should we get to the predictions? What do you think of CJ Mosley in this one?
No, I agree for sure, because especially if the defensive line does, struggle to plug some of those holes, then it just puts extra responsibility on the linebackers to where, okay, we're not really going to plug these gaps, so it's on you. You're either going to make these stops or we're going to give up big runs. And I was looking at some of the Lions running backs numbers, and they don't break a ton of tackles. I think they're the 5th lowest, the Lions running backs, in terms of missed tackles forced per carry. So they're not super elusive. If the holes are there, like they frequently are with this offensive line, they hit it hard. They're downhill runners who are going to take advantage of it, but they're not going to make you miss too often. So I want to see the linebackers and the safeties tackle well, tackle efficiently, don't miss a lot of tackles, don't give this offense anything more than it deserves to get. You can't afford to give cheap yards to a really good offense, especially, like we said, could be a tough one up front. So linebackers need to be clean, tackle well in the run game.
All right, let's get to some predictions. Actually, sorry, one more thing. Where the Jets are better. Let's do this. Rapid fire.
Let's do it.
Quarterback, probably have to go with the Lions on this one.
Yeah, Lions.
Hard to say anything else. Running
Who's
back.
Mike White? I'm curious, what would we say? We go probably push?
Yeah, we probably go push. But yeah. I would rather, we go push on that one. Hypothetical argument. Running back? Probably Lions. Probably Lions.
Probably fair to go Lions. I mean, with the numbers they're putting up. So let's just say Lions. But I mean, Knight, the way he's playing really well.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. He's a guy that you could, we have to see it for a few more weeks, but he might be the best running back in this game. But as of right now, I think you got to go with the Lions. Receivers. It's actually an interesting one. I would no Corey Davis.
Similar, because I think, both of them are led by one star, kind of maybe lacking some depth after that.
I'd probably go. That's really tough. With Corey Davis, I think I'd go with the Jets. Without Corey Davis, I think I'd go with the Lions.
Yeah,
we haven't seen too much from Jameson Williams, but he's how dangerous he is.
Wow, yeah, I would say Lions, just because those guys are getting it done in a highly efficient offense. Jets have a lot of guys who are struggling, like Barrios, Mims. So I would go Lions slightly here.
Tight end, you got to give to the Jets.
Yeah, for sure.
Offensive tackle, you definitely go to the Lions in this one. Sorry, George.
Yeah.
Interior O-line. Probably. Well,
probably. I'd give it to the Lions. I mean, Ragnow is probably one of the top centers. Their guards maybe aren't the sharpest part of their O-line. I don't think the Jets deserve to be ahead of the Lions here.
Herbig has been good. Tomlinson has been up and down. McGovern has been a lot better than I think I've given.
That's exactly what I was going to say, like up and down, because he actually has. I know he started really bad. Like he does have good games sometimes, but then it comes back down. So just inconsistent.
Yeah. Defensive tackle. No Quinnen Williams for the Jets in this one, but they do have Sheldon Rankins. Maybe you count JFM. Well, we're going to count him as an edge. So you got Sheldon Rankins, Solomon Thomas, Nathan Shepard, Tanzel Smart.
I mean, the Lions' interior D-line might be one of the worst. I mean, they really don't have anything, so I would still give it to the Jets.
I was honestly saying all those Jets defensive tackles while I was trying to look up, who the hell are you?
Trying to look up their depth chart. That's exactly what I was doing.
I was like, who the hell are the Lions defensive tackles? Edge. This is actually kind of a close one, but I think I would go with the Jets because of Bryce
I think
Huff.
I'd still go Jets. I mean, Hutchinson's having a good rookie season, but it's kind of it, I guess. I mentioned James Houston. Definitely look out for him, but small sample.
But Huff is better than him. And the Jets have Carl, Jermaine, JFM, and Clemens.
Yeah.
So it's Edge.
I'd go Jets here.
Linebacker. Lions do have Ramirez, but I like Mosley, Quan, and Quincy have been, it's not they haven't been perfect, but they've been pretty damn good. So I would go linebacker here for the Jets. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Corners, definitely Jets. And safeties, also Jets. Right? You agree with that? Any
I mean, to be completely honest, I don't know too much about their safeties. I mean, Elliott, and who I think was a backup for the Ravens, and Kirby Joseph, who's a rookie. So he does have 3 picks, but we know that can be misleading. So I honestly don't know. But the Jets safeties aren't very good either. Um, I guess push. I mean that I just hesitate to give the Jets safeties an edge over anyone. So I don't know.
Do we know who has the better special teams DVOA between the two teams? I think it's the Jets. Oh, the Lions are right behind them though.
Oh yeah, did you have the rankings up right
I was
now?
looking at it, yeah, but I'm not logged in, so I don't have the exact numbers. I don't want to mess this up. I think maybe you should do this numbers guy, but I think
Okay,
the
I'll try to
Jets are
look
ahead
it
of
up.
them.
You talk about something. Talk about something.
Um, uniforms. No. No,
That's
I
always
think
a great the
yeah.
go-to. Like you could, that's the one thing
Green
probably
on
more than
green.
anything else in this entire planet I could just start a conversation about. More
That's
so than the actual football.
that's
There's nothing
all right.
sad about it.
Yeah. Okay.
Every passion is, like has its niche. So I don't
All right.
know.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with liking uniforms.
That's on brand for us, Michael. I mean, our podcast, we talk about the unis, and when they inevitably change these unis or logo or bring back retros, people are going to be coming here to listen because we talk about them. So yeah. I
Exactly.
don't
They
know.
want their coverage. All right, I got the numbers.
All
Jets
right.
are
Well,
18th. Detroit is ninth. Interesting.
oh, so we give Detroit special teams, and so you know what that means, Michael. Let me make sure I'm right on this. That means that is a right down the middle draw between the two of them. We gave the Jets tight
Hey,
end,
I
defensive
mean, this
tackle,
this was a
edge,
pick 'em at one point in the
linebacker.
odds, so makes sense.
Yeah, tight end, defensive tackle, edge, linebacker, corner, and safety for the Jets. That's 6, and the Lions got QB, running back, receiver, tackle, interior offensive lineman, and special teams. So the Lions, we basically gave the Jets the entire defense, and we gave the Lions the entire offense minus the tight end, but they get special teams. So
It
that's how that
makes
balanced
perfect
out.
sense. I think that's what we would expect.
All right. Prediction times. Best case, worst case. And by that, I also kind of mean what are the keys to this game? I mean, that's kind of what we're saying.
I mean, you want to start out?
Sure.
Best
I
case
ask
scenario?
the questions around here, but yeah, sure.
You ask the question, I just throw it right back to you.
Well, best case scenario is a fast start. Best case scenario is a touchdown drive on the Jets' first possession, or at least a scoring drive. We want to see Zach Wilson just move the ball, early on. Even if they move the ball and they have to settle for 3 a few times, I just want to. If we go out there and it's 3 and outs or sacks or a turnover, or it'll get ugly in that stadium. So best case scenario is a fast start, especially offensively for Zach. You want him to kind of get in his groove, get in his rhythm. I feel like when he is feeling himself, he plays well. It's just sometimes when that switch goes off, he's not able to rebound. So I want to see a good Zach game. And then, defensively, it's just dominance. I mean, I think it's easier to talk about the worst case because the best case scenario is, well, everybody plays well. But specifically, I would just say a fast start. The Jets are winning the battle in the trenches, at least offensively. Their offensive line is handling Detroit's pressure packages and opening up holes in the run game for Bam Knight. And Garrett Wilson is just wide open all game. I think that's what you're hoping for, and that Zach is able to just keep getting the ball to Garrett. And then defensively, it's just, can they create a pass rush? The best case scenario is that they create a pass rush without Quentin Williams. Maybe we get that Carl Lawson breakout game. Maybe he steps it up. But get pressure on Goff with 4. If they're able to win with 4, I think they win this game. If they aren't getting any push with their 4, and it's not just pass rush, it's in the run game too.
Yeah.
If they're getting down in the trenches by this, because look, Detroit has one of the best O lines, but you would also say the Jets have one of the best D lines, and I know that includes Quentin Williams, but even without Quentin, it's still a great defensive line and a deep defensive line. So they can't be getting their ass kicked in the trenches on both sides, but especially in the defense, they have to hold their own. And then I do trust these corners to lock it down. So yeah, I don't know, create some turnovers and get pressure on Goff is, about all the football cliches I can spit out. You got any best case, worst case stuff?
I guess best case, I really think if we're talking best case scenario, I think it has to involve Zach Wilson playing really well and finally kind of unlocking his arm against this type of man coverage defense that's going to give you some opportunities to make plays, and then also some opportunities. We haven't mentioned this yet. Another advantage of playing a man defense, there's some running opportunities. Where's the guy we saw against Jacksonville last year? I want to see some more of that. So I think a
And the
best
Lions have been
case.
susceptible. I mean,
Yep.
Allen went off against them on the ground. I think Rodgers had like
Yep.
40 yards running against them. I mean,
Actually, I looked at this earlier. They have given up the most rush yards to quarterbacks. Part of that is schedule. You know, some teams play Fields, some teams don't, but they are number one in that right now. So
all right, Zach.
susceptibility to that.
So why is Flacco the backup and not Strevler?
I
Why
mean,
answer me
I
that?
guess like I don't
I
know
know what
because
you're gonna
maybe
say.
Strevler is just it's hard to build offense around what
Yeah,
he does. You know, so
but if
is it
Zach,
transferable to the regular season? What he's doing in the preseason? I guess that would be the
it
concern.
got to be better than what Flacco is doing.
Yeah.
Maybe not, but it does seem like if Flacco is out there, the Jets aren't winning anything, especially if the Lions are going to throw those pressure packages at him. And it's just like, yeah, if Zach goes down or if he's not playing well and the game is within striking distance, they put Strevler in that game in front of the home crowd, they're getting yards. You know, he's moving up and down the field. Because even if he's just taking off his legs every time and the Jets offense looks different, it feels like best chance to win if Zach goes down or whatever, between Flacco and Strevler gives you the better chance. I guess the other thing to think about from the Jets' perspective, I hope this isn't the reason, but if Strevler's your backup, maybe the fans are a little quicker to start booing Zach and calling for him to get benched. Where it's like,
Yeah.
or the fans going to be
But
calling for him
if
to
it's
get benched.
Flacco, you're just gonna put up with it.
Yeah, exactly. But if it's Strevler, there's going to be, we got this guy on the bench. We got to put him, so maybe that's part of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you on what you said about Zach running the ball.
Oh, yeah. So I think best case scenario really involves Zach Wilson unlocking the full extent of his abilities because this is a tough Lions offense. Usually when they lose, you have to put up at least 24, 25 points to beat them. So I think if they're going to do that, it's going to involve Zach Wilson playing well. So I think a best case scenario all starts with the quarterback. And then defensively, I think it's I'm going to go to the key you brought up. I'm going to look at the linebackers. I think good tackling from them, regardless of what the D-line does, if you can get that good tackling, good angles, good gap filling from your linebackers, I
Play
think
rec.
that can make up for it. Play recognition, all those things can help mitigate any issues you might have up front and keep that run game quiet, keep the pressure on Jared Goff and his arm against these corners. Because I think the corners against the receivers you can rely on in this game. It's just how are they going to handle that run game? How are they going to create pressure? So I think the linebackers are the key to maintaining that pressure on Goff in the sense that let's make him throw and beat these corners. So best case scenario, I'm looking at quarterback balling out and the linebackers. Worst case scenario, I guess let's flip that.
Yeah.
Zach Wilson looking like the same guy he was, throwing interceptions that don't make sense, not being confident, and pulling the trigger on reads that are open. And I think, like you said, if you don't get off to a fast start, I think that's not ideal against this team because Jets have had some comeback wins this year, but they've generally been against teams that probably aren't as high octane offensively as the Lions are. I guess you could throw the Bills in there as a good offense they came back on, but generally it's tough to come back on a good offense. So although their defense does potentially make it easier to come back, but you don't want to get into a shootout with the Lions. Let's just say that. So I think a fast start helps you avoid doing that.
Yeah, and the worst case is that they're getting dominated in the trenches, and like you said, Zach Wilson's turning the ball over. If they're getting dominated in the trenches and Zach Wilson's turning the ball over, I don't know how I feel about this one. Then the game will turn into, if they can keep it close, let's say they go into half with that as your reality. They're getting dominated in the trenches, Zach's turning the ball over. If they can keep it somewhat close, given that scenario, like I'm talking within 14 points at half, then they're going to have to flip the game on its head and really go, all right, we got to blitz them then. We have to get after it. We have to stack the box, flip everything defensively. And then offensively, I think, there is a part of me that feels Zach does play better when he's playing loose. I shouldn't say there's a part of me. There, entirely is true. And there's a part of me that feels like a lot of the best Zach drives that we've seen have been like late in games. And like, yes, you can credit that to a defense is playing prevent. They're just trying to make you burn time. And so there's part of that, but there is also part of it where it's like, all right, the game's over. F it. It doesn't matter if I throw an interception. I just got to move the ball down the field. And you saw that the Patriots game. I think you saw it Falcons game his rookie year. You've seen it a few times where at the end of the game, if they're losing
Panthers,
and then he just starts to make things happen a little bit easier. Yeah. So I don't know. I guess we can do random predictions.
Yeah, let's do some random predictions. You want
All
to
right.
start? I think
Oh,
you had one in mind, right?
I said the Sauce Gardner interception. Says there's one for the defense. I think Sauce gets an interception. Offensively, I don't know how crazy I want to go with on this one. I would say, well, here's my conservative random prediction: Zach Wilson rushing touchdown. Now my aggressive one would be
pretty good. It's pretty good.
My aggressive one. Here's what I'm going with. Ready? 3 total touchdowns for Zach Wilson.
Okay.
How do you feel?
I like it. I like it. It's realistic, but also bold. I guess, yeah, I was kind of deliberating. Do I want to do something pretty weird and random, like maybe George Fant getting revenge on Penny Sewell for kind of stealing the thunder of offensive linemen catching passes? I'm going to pass on that one, though. It's a little too bold. I'll go with, how about this one? Elijah Moore, 2 touchdowns.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, I like that. You got one for the defense?
Defensively, I'll go with MC2 interception. Let's go with that.
I'm writing it down this time. All right, let's give one more each. Okay, I'm gonna go to you first because I'm writing these down. Got a third one for me? Let's get crazy with this one, but not like
really crazy.
Okay, but not like not like George Fant catches a touchdown pass. Like something bold, but within the actual realm of a possibility.
I'll go with, let's say Justin Hardy forces a fumble on a punt return, and Kenny Yeboah recovers.
Okay, see, like that's exactly what I was talking about.
That's not ridiculous. That's within the realm of possibility.
I guess there's like a 0.01% chance that I was talking like Garrett Wilson has
2 touchdowns for more,
200 yards. I was saying something like yeah. Okay, fine.
I guess too specific.
You know what? You can write that down in the doc. I'm not typing that all out.
Okay.
I guess okay, fine. If you want to give a really specific, bold, random prediction, I'll give you one. Let me think. You with the special teams, I predicted the Barrios touchdown return last week. It did not come true. I do feel like he's due to break one at some point, though, right? He is due to run one back, but I'll refrain from now. I'll go. The Jets run a non-quarterback pass that goes for more than 25 yards. You like that?
Okay. Yeah, that is definitely bold.
Non-QB
based
pass.
on the way those plays have gone this year.
Yeah.
Other than the Barrios pass, I guess that was nice.
Yeah, so I'll say they have a non-QB pass.
Not pretty.
All right, score prediction, Michael. How are you feeling about this one? I think I've predicted a win for the Jets every single game, going all the way back to – I'm trying to think the last game I predicted them to lose. Probably the first Bills game, I think. So
yeah,
I've gotten a little too biased, I guess, maybe with my predictions. But
I think for me, unfortunately, I'm going to have to lean towards Detroit here. With the Mike White loss, I'm just not feeling it. I'm going to root my hardest, hope for the best, do all my superstitions going into this game. But if I were betting,
what are your superstitions? Let me hear how weird you are. And I
mean,
say this as somebody who also has plenty of
I've
gone through phases of superstitions as well. Let me hear some.
Yeah, I mean, well, earlier this season, I've kind of abandoned this, but I was just matching the jersey colors that they were wearing.
That's not too weird.
I think they were 4-0 when I'm through the first 6 games. They were 4-0 when I matched 0-2 when I forgot to. Then the Patriots game, they lost. I had my black Carl Lawson jersey, so I abandoned it after that point. Other than that, do I have any specific superstitions that I go with? I don't know actually. Maybe I don't really have any besides that. But yeah, I'm gonna go with the Lions here if I were a betting man, but I'm not. So fortunately, I will not lose any money either way. But I'm gonna go with the Lions 30, Jets 23. Let's go with that.
30-23 Lions.
Yeah.
Oof. Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to predict a win. But because I predicted wins the last few weeks and they've lost, I'm gonna predict a loss. But I'm trying to like not pollute my opinions with my fan bias. I do feel like the Jets are going to win this game, but it does feel like, all right, I shouldn't keep just predicting the Jets to win. And if we're being honest, on paper, the Lions maybe should be the favorite. So I'll go with you, Michael. I'll predict a Lions loss. Let's maybe, if I will say, if the Jets, if I predict a loss and the Jets win in dominating fashion, maybe I'm just going to have to keep predicting them to lose. So I'll go, let's see. If the Lions are controlling the line of scrimmage and Zach isn't playing too well, I'll say the Jets put up 13 and the Lions put up 24. 24-13 Lions. I like that. Okay. That's my 27-13 Lions. How about that? 27-13 Lions.
Yeah, that's fair. I was going to kind of go with the more lopsided score, but I guess I figured I'd push it up a little bit. Yeah, I guess we're both going Lions here.
Feels wrong.
I would have picked the Jets if Michael White was playing.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. So that was definitely a bummer, but I mean, hey, if Zach Wilson's going to be the guy, it's hard to script a cooler story, I guess, than doing it this way.
That's the thing. Like you're like, passion. That's where you're like, I was more depressed about this than any other Jets loss. It's like, all right, well, this was a bummer, but it's also like, all right, White's season isn't done, and this is a game you really, really want to win, but. And it's not a must win though. We've laid out why. And like if the Jets lose, it'll make it a lot harder for them to make the playoffs. But if they lose and the Dolphins lose to the Bills, then you're just looking at it as like, all right, 3 in a row and they're in. I don't know. I feel like for Zach, this is the storyline. It's like number 2 overall pick, lose your job. It's all in front of you. You've had a few weeks off. You can get the Jets into the playoffs. You can save their season. You can change a lot of the rhetoric that's been spewed about you. I mean, he's gotten dragged on social media for weeks now, and he never got a chance to respond to that Patriots game, which I think has also kind of skewed the fan base's perception of him as a quarterback. Obviously, he was not good this year, but that was the worst quarterback performance he's had as a professional, I would say. Maybe even his first game at the Pats might be worse than that, but it's up there. So I don't know. It's all right in front of him. I'm fascinated to see what he's going to do on Sunday. I'm very excited for the opportunity for him, because it's like, if he goes out there and lights these Lions up, and then it's like, got a decision on your hands, Jets fans. It's like, do you go with the number 2 overall pick if he wins these next 2 games for them and he's playing well, or do you go back to White, who showed what he's made of against good teams in high pressure situations? It's fascinating to think about, but obviously cheering for Zach in this one. Let's hope we can pull this one through. Follow us at COJ Pod on Twitter. Michael_Nania, myself, Ben W. Blessington. Go to jetsxfactor.com. Best place to go for Jets content. Subscribe to the Jets X Factor YouTube. Rate, review, subscribe on iTunes. Helps out the pod a ton. I think that's it, Michael. Any last thoughts? We're recording this very, very late on Friday night. Technically Saturday morning. Any last thoughts?
12:50 on Saturday morning here.
Nice.
We're one day away from one of the I was going to say one of the biggest Jets games in recent history, but we say that every single week, so I'm not going to say that. But a huge Jets game. So let's talk about some uniforms with that in mind.
Oh, fucking Jesus Christ.
Green on green this week, as we both anticipated.
Are you serious? All right, okay, sorry.
I'm not a huge fan of green on green typically, but I'm just glad to see some green jerseys at this point in the season, because we haven't seen it yet this year. So
I think the green on green's underrated.
You know what I think though? I think against the Lions, it's a really good color matchup. Yeah. Green on green against, I'm assuming they'll be all white, or will they be white on blue? Either way, I like that color matchup.
Yeah, it's a good point. It'll be a pretty uniform matchup. Hopefully the Jets make it a pretty game on their end. All right, Michael, I guess that's it. Thank you everybody for listening. Have a great weekend. We'll be back Sunday night talking this Jets game. It'll be certainly a very interesting podcast. Hopefully we have a happy Michael Nania. If I get on here, Michael, and if you check the next podcast episode and it's sad, Michael Nania, things didn't go too well.
I'm always happy. I'm a jovial guy.
Yeah.
Always on here, jolly, talking about the Jets.
It is hard to be high energy at 1 a.m. talking about the Jets, but you know what, Michael? We powered through. What are we at? We're at.
We had pretty good energy, but maybe the past 10 minutes or so, I started to power down a little bit.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. Have a great weekend. Go Jets.